Bob told several of us to refer to him as UB. He told us it didn't stand for Uncle Bob, but he said it stood for Ubiquitous Bob. So being the curious young man that I was, as I was much younger back then, I decided to look it up, and the definition of ubiquitous is present, appearing, or being found everywhere. An example of this was his ubiquitous influence was felt by all his family and friends. And I'll tell you what, that to a T would fit our Bob. Real quick, if you don't mind, if we'll just bow our heads real quick, I just want to do a quick prayer and open that up with this. Father in heaven, thank you so much for all the safe travels to get everyone here. Thank you for this special time to be able to celebrate an amazing human being. Thank you for the time you gave us with him on this earth. Thank you for all the special family that are here, all the special friends to come celebrate and should pay tribute to a man that touched so many of us in so many ways. We just ask that you have your guiding hand over this ceremony and just help us all enjoy and just bring honor and to a man that we all, of course, love very, very dearly here. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Just 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Two over.
Can you tell the story while you're doing it?
I
Is
could.
it-
There's not time for that part.
Okay, sorry. I shut up. I'm sorry.
You're doing good though, Blair, so you're doing very good. Okay, sorry. Just a quick brief history here. Bob was born in Detroit, Michigan on August 10, 1935, to parents Roman and Viola. He grew up in the city of Hamtramck, a suburb just outside of Detroit, with his older brother Theodore and younger sister Nancy. He had a love of music. Early on, he played the saxophone and the clarinet. He also played in polka bands for weddings. He was a bit of a sports junkie, as am I, and we love to talk about all kinds of sports, especially his beloved Detroit Lions. Couldn't stand them. He played softball and ice hockey in grade school. He did his high school years were filled with lots of football, music, and he even worked as well at jobs such as the local meat market. He enjoyed playing pool, and he was quite accomplished at it. But his favorite sports were golfing and bowling. Bob joined the Army in 1954 to 1956 at the end of the Korean War. A little fun fact that some may not know about Bob: he decided to leave Michigan in 1960. When he went to the train station, the clerk asked him where he was going, and he said, "Heads Florida and tails California." Tails it was, so he moved to Southern California, or so the story goes. I think I heard a song about that too. In 1962, he married the beautiful Elaine Thilgen. We love you, Auntie Elaine. Love you. Together they had 3 children. Robert, I call him Cousin Bob. He had Tracy and Mandy. And Tracy, we miss you, we love you, and you are here with us right now. I just wanted to say that especially for her. He worked at many tech companies over the years, such as Data Products, Ampeg, Honeywell, Pertec, Tandon, of course, FutureNet, and Truvel, and others. He participated in various company golf and bowling leagues, including at Tandon, where his team won several first-place trophies. He also enjoyed a very successful career in trade show registration management, and one of his favorite jobs later in years was at the Arizona Helicopter Adventures in Sedona. I'd like to know what he was doing there. While working at Tandon, Bob also met his future wife, Barbara. They were married in September 1989, and then he became the stepfather to Jody and Kevin. Bob was forced to retire in 1999 due to continuing heart failure, but in 2002, he received the miracle of a heart transplant. To Brody, the heart donor, who, through his precious gift of donating his own heart, gave Bob the gift of more time on this earth. We love you, Brody. Thank you for that. Those were special years. Brody's Aunt Rebecca is here with us tonight, too, today. So we're very grateful she's here. Thank you. Right here. Beautiful, amazing gift. Thank you for that extra time. Bob is survived by his wife, Barbara, his brother, Ted, his sister, Nancy, and husband, Don, his son, Robert, and the grandsons, Robert and wife, Janae, and Ryan and his wife, Stephanie, his daughter, Mandy, and grandson, Stephen, stepdaughter, Jody and Adam, and grandsons, Zachary, Zach, and Joshua. Love those names. Stepson, Kevin, and his wife, Clarissa. And of course, the grandchildren, Tyler. Tough to call a grandchild, that's a behemoth of a man. And the twins, Atlas and Athena, who are with us here today. In amazing outfits, by the way. Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh, nice. Towards the end of his life, Bob was able to be at home instead of at the hospital, which we know he would much rather preferred, with his amazing, loving wife, Barbara, who took wonderful care of him. Both Bobby and Mandy just went out of the way to let me know that they were so glad they got to see him in his last weeks and had amazing praise for the incredible care and love that Barbara was giving him. And what a blessing she has been to him over these many years. All right, so I guess we can do the story behind the tie now. We'll try that.
Yeah.
For some of you who may not know, so when I was younger days, a friend of mine and I, we used to do this thing where we go out for these extravagant trips and we would purchase very nice clothing and take them on these trips, pretend how wealthy we were. And then when we got back from the trips, we obviously couldn't afford these clothes, so we had to go then and return the clothes. So, cheap, just a little cheap. Well, Uncle Bobby found out about this little scheme I had going on with a friend of mine. I would not do this anymore. So he was determined to teach me another, and a keyword there, another life lesson. Soon after, at a family wedding, I'd gone out and purchased a very nice, very overpriced tie that I fell in love with, and I had no intentions of returning this tie. And I wore it to the wedding. Well, in front of everyone, Bob walks up. He's got some scissors behind his hands and proceeds to come up to me and cut my tie off. And his comment was, "Let's see you try and return that one." So, thank you, Uncle Bobby. Not to be outdone, though, by our ubiquitous Bob, for Bob's wedding to Barbara, all my brothers and I got together and at a point in the festivities walked up with all of us wearing cut-off ties at the knot and told him, "We thought we would just beat you to the punch this time. So this sacrificial tie is for you, Uncle Bob." Uncle Bob had many gifts and talents. One of them was his communication skills and the ability to combine both strength and love, and always delivering with gentleness and respect. Well, with the gentleness, there was one time where I was suspect a little bit. He taught me a handshake lesson. I received from him when I was younger, and he basically comes over one day and he says, "Bubba, so good to see you." And he stretches out his hand to shake mine, and I must have given him a weak handshake at the time. So he began to squeeze my hand until I was at my knees in pain and near tears. I say I didn't cry, other people said I cried. And he said, "You need to always show respect to other people by giving them a firm handshake." Well, I was so mad at him for being so mean, but I think my pride was more hurt than my hand because I was this stud of a teenager, as I was. No longer, obviously. And here was this old man who was able to bring me to my knees. But the lesson I learned was, to this day, I always show my respect by giving a firm handshake, and have taught my kids the same thing. Thank you, Uncle Bob, for this and the many other life lessons you taught me over all the years. And there were many. Uncle Bob was well known for being such a generous gift giver as well. We had these, So one time, he decided to give me an amazing gift of a self-portrait of himself, larger than life as you can see, with the words scrolled onto the picture, "To my favorite." And of course, I came to find out later that dozens of these have been sent out to a multitude of family and friends. And every one of them said "to my favorite" scrolled on them. So another example of his creative giving talents was revealed one year when he showed up at Christmas time with a large box full of these custom-made trophies. Each one was uniquely designed for everyone present. One specific example was my brother Johnny's trophy that had a bull on top of the nameplate, and below it read, "Professional Bull Slinger." And trust me, it was very fitting. Every trophy was uniquely tailored to the person it was intended for. The time and effort that was invested into those custom gifts blows me away to this day, as well as the lengths our Bob would go to in bringing in joy and laughter to everyone. So many wonderful memories. There was the all-day 31 tournaments at my house, where the older folks, as we called them then, played cards all day, while all us kids killed ourselves in the pool. All the amazing hats that Bob would wear. The trips up to Gardnerville, where I would have to hunt him and Barbara down at the Carson Valley Inn playing penny slots. And so many more wonderful stories I could share with you about this amazing human being. But my beautiful wife, she asked me not to ramble on too long, so I like to share some descriptive words about our Bob that I call UB euphemisms. He was a husband, a father, a brother, an uncle, a grandpa, a friend. He was loving, caring, honest. He was devoted, driven, debonair. Remarkable, sincere, strong, smart. He was a courageous, he was character, he was a comic, charming, and oh so colorful. As we can tell by all the shirts around here, I can tell everybody read that little note. He would also like me to add that he was handsome as well, I'm sure of that. He was extraordinary, influential. He was a prankster, pervasive, persuasive, and passionate. And last but not least, he was ubiquitous. We loved you, ubiquitous Bob. You will be in our hearts forever. So, in an effort to not ramble on, I'd like to pass the microphone over to Barbara. And don't forget to fill out those cards on your desk on the table there if you get a chance. Thank you guys very, very much.
Hello, thank you all for coming. This is just fabulous. Okay, my plan is to share some lighthearted stories about Bob. When I met Bob in 1980, he scared me.
Quite frankly.
I had recently started at Tandon Corporation. Some of my buddies are here today. I was 29 years old and quite shy. He was bold, blustery, and loud. We were total opposites. I'm a rule follower, and there were no rules for him. The first time I went to his house, there was a table covered with unopened bills. He said, "As long as I pay in full, they don't care when." So after being on the same bowling teams and playing golf in tournaments, we became friends. Just 9 years later, we were married. He was 16 years older than me, but I didn't know that for a long time. He always lied about his age and his height. He was not 6'4". He really enjoyed messing with people. He told me the story about going into his favorite liquor store at the beach in the 70s called Davy Jones Liquor Locker in Venice. I think it's still there. He was at the counter when a young punk came in with a drawn gun. Bob stuck his finger in the barrel and told the kid to get out. It startled the would-be robber so much that he ran from the store. One day he needed a windshield wiper, so he dropped into the local parts store. When he went to the counter to find the right one, the clerk asked him what make of car he had. He said, "I don't know, I'll go outside and check." When we lived in Sedona in the mid-90s, there was an annual chili cook-off in Flagstaff. One day he went to the local fish store to buy some frozen mealworms for our pet turtle. Thanks, Kevin and Hanger, for the turtle. He overheard the ladies at the counter talking about it. He said, "I always enter that contest too, and these are my secret ingredients." He walked out with a straight face. Now, we're going to have some chili today, but I did not use his secret ingredient. In 2001, he was so convinced that we were going to win the California lottery that he wanted to find out about the companies that promised to pay you the total amount instead of the yearly annuity from California. He was so convincing on the phone with Peachtree Settlement Funding that they sent him a letter. "Congratulations on your winning the California lottery." I still have that letter, and I have hopes that now it will come true. And they still have us on their mailing list. Okay, Bob was a city boy. The first time I took him fishing in Sedona on Oak Creek, we brought worms. He did not do any fishing in his hometown of Detroit. Before I could show him how to bait a hook, he cut the worm with scissors. In the 80s, we went to Hawaii many times and played a lot of golf. One time on Maui, I hit my ball and it bounced back after hitting the skinniest tree I'd ever seen. There were 4 of these trees near each other. The ball dropped right back by my feet. He thought this was hilarious. I hit the ball again and here it came back again. He laughed and said that I could never hit that tree again if I tried all day. He was wrong. It came back the 3rd time. I thought he was going to wet himself. In the early 1990s, he became a background artist for the movies. He had fun, but none of his films ever made it to completion. But that was the source of the infamous favorite 8x10 glossies that he gave to so many people over the years. Those photos were the best $200 he ever spent. Speaking of money, almost every day he'd ask me if Kathy had brought us any money in the mail. By the way, this balloon up here, we were making some balloons today and one of the yellow ones got away. You know who that is, he's watching. Anyway, dear, Kaiser sent you a refund 2 weeks ago of $12.28. True story. Kathy wanted to be here today. I don't know if she's here. That's our mail lady. We all, us Springers, we all know Kathy. Okay, I want to introduce our next speaker, Rebecca Smith. She is the aunt of Brody, Bob's heart donor. She has an amazing family. I'd like you to all welcome her.
Thank you so much for that welcome. I'll try my best not to lose it. I don't have no guarantees. as Barb expressed, I'm Brody's auntie, and okay, let's try this again. He truly was the person I love most in life. He was an animal activist and artist and just this true lover of life. And if anybody ever had any problems, he always had a bag of tea in his pocket. And he'd say, let's go have some tea and talk about it. So he was quite a kid. And unfortunately, on May 23rd, 2002, he had a terrible motorcycle accident. Whatever you do, don't let your kids ride motorcycles, okay? Promise me that. He had a terrible motorcycle accident and died. But because he was such a generous, wonderful, loving soul, it was decided right away that we would donate as much as we could through Donate a Life. I wasn't quite sure what to share today, but I think the biggest gift that Bob and Brody gave to me was something to do with this question I'm going to ask you, which is, let's have a show of hands. How many of you believe that there is something beyond this world and that the spirits of the people that are a part of our life live on in us? Oh, I like that. Thank goodness, I'm talking to the right crowd then. So I'm kind of a Eastern thought, Buddhist transcendentalist, and somewhat Christian also kind of person. And but I never was quite sure, but it was one of those enigmatic questions that you never can know for sure until we do pass on. And so after a year of Brody's death, we're allowed to contact the families. And so right away I wrote to Donate a Life, which is through UCLA, I believe, and to see if Bob's family would be willing to speak with us about this. And he donated the retina and some skin to avert, but the only person who answered was Bob's family. And so I wrote this letter to them, and we're not allowed, not to them, I had to write it to UCLA first. You can't say anything about the person, you just have to say, I would like to meet you. And so, sure enough, I received a letter back from the family saying on Valentine's Day, which I thought was particularly significant since Bob had received Brody's heart, and what a heart it was. So there was, UCLA holds these picnics once a year mostly for the people who have received organs, but we wanted to meet them right away. So because we couldn't share information or anything, our family put together this T-shirt that had a picture of Brody on the back. Oh, Barb, can you bring me Brody's picture? It's right there behind you. This isn't the picture, but but the one that's on the board is the one that was on the T-shirt. And on the T-shirt was the dates of the day that Brody died, and then, or he was born and then he died. And I was off playing with my little nephew, and all of a sudden, I hear these screams of joy. And I ran over to see what was going on, and sure enough, Barb and Bob had found Linda and Jerry, who were the parents of Brody, and they knew it was him because of the dates. So that was a joyous occasion, and I'm sorry. Hold that for me. So Brody's mom, she wanted to hear her son's heart. That was really hard. Because apparently, usually when there's a heart transplant, it has to be shocked to get it to move again. And in the case of Brody's, into Bob, who was such a lively person also, it just started. And So Linda, his mom, asked if we could listen. So Bob, of course, in his joyful way, he pulls up his shirt. There's this big scar in the middle of his chest. And Linda was listening. And I asked, well, let me go ahead with the story. And, you know, we all got a chance to listen, and it was quite a beautiful moment to know that we had lost Brody, but it had given life to Bob. And so, but at one point, Bob got this very confused look on his face, and he said, I have to ask you a question. Now, all of you know that Bob was born in Detroit, and he's, and Barb told me he's 100% Polish, right? So 100% Polish, born in Detroit. So he asked us all, while Linda was listening to us, right? He said, I have to ask you something. And then we were going, okay. And he said, when I was coming out from the anesthesia, the doctor said, who are you and where are you from? And I said, I'm Native American from Oklahoma. Bob is from Detroit. Well, it turns out that on my father's side, we are Choctaw Native American from Oklahoma. And on Linda's side, Brody's mom, she is Cherokee from Oklahoma. And I love it that you're saying, wow, because you got it. It was a confirmation for me that yes, in fact, there is something on the other side. Because only Brody would have thought to say that, to make it so obvious to everyone that yes, in fact, he lived on in Bob, and that there is that world beyond us. And I think that was the gift I wanted to share with you. Because sometimes we think we believe, but we're not sure and all that sort of stuff. But when you have that kind of a confirmation, it's just it's an affirmation of yes, in fact, we do have a world beyond this. Of course, we almost all fainted at that point because it was that confirmation. Despite our sadness about, of course, losing Brody, I look at all of you and I looked at all the pictures, and Clarissa pointed out something. If you look on that board, there's a point where you'll see Brody, which is when he had the heart transplant. And then there's all this life afterwards. And my family the rest of my family couldn't be here today because every year they go up to Mammoth to Rainbow Falls, where they put most of Brody's ashes. And they already had it all set up before we knew about the celebration of life. But I wanted to say that they wanted me to say to you and your family, Barbara especially, which is everyone here, I would imagine, how proud we were that a person so fine as Bob had received his heart. I think they were kind of kindred souls in that sense. They both had this wonderful, generous heart and love for others, and could make people laugh and watch out for them, even though sometimes he was hard on them because I was hearing. But so I would like to say thank you from them, and that Bob got 17 years with Barb and all of you. And that is quite a blessing for a family who has lost someone. I would encourage you, if you haven't signed up to donate life, that you do, because you give life to the people who have lost someone. And that I wanted to say that there's been a second transplant, not just the one that Brody gave to Bob. And that transplant is a spiritual heart that will live on in all of you. And that's a wonderful thing. So thank you so much for the I don't know who's next.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm John Durrell, and as far as I know, I was a friend of Bob's. A great guy, and the gift of what you just shared is amazing to me, and I'm so happy that I got a chance to hear you. And so much has been said about Bob's humor and the fact that he always made me laugh, and he always picked on me too. I mean, every time I see him over at Gifts, or a friend of mine, we'd have a meeting of a men's group. Sometimes Bob was in recovery, 12-step recovery, as I am, and still to this day. And he had, I don't know how many years old, in the 30s. And every time I'd see him, he'd have some kind of well, you know who he was. He wouldn't dig at you, but he'd say, "How have you been?" And I'd say, "Fine." He'd say, "Why?" I'd say, "Bob, I've just been fine." He said, "Well, that's good." I'd say, "No, that's bad." And we had one of those conversations that didn't mean anything, but we always laughed. And he had a great sense of humor. And then when I saw him after he got his heart, that was amazing. And I said, "Would you mind speaking at a Friday night men's group at Our Lady of Malibu, a men's group meeting?" And he came down and spoke. And to this day, this was 10 years ago or so, I have kids all the time, Barb asking me, "Hey, where's that weird guy that had the new heart?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I guarantee you he's not drinking anywhere right there." But in all of, when we look at someone like him, he was, I wouldn't see him for a long time, and then I'd see him, and it was like yesterday. And that's the kind of affection and the kind of friendship we had. It was very close, and sometimes it'd be maybe at a meeting, maybe at a men's group, maybe just getting together. But he was such a good man, and I always loved. When I thought about him, I thought about laughter, and he was just full of laughter and a few other things. But anyway, there was a song he and Barbara both really loved it. I'd written years ago. I'm a songwriter, and I've worked in the industry for years. And this song is kind of a replication of his life, and it was not by accident. And back in the early 90s, there was a church group called the Church for Today that you and Barbara and Bob attended. My friend Gift back there, and his wife Diane and Joyce, and we all congregated and expressed belief about what we believed in, and it wasn't unified in any one doctrine. And I'd written this song called "Blessing in Disguise," and a friend of mine sang it, Frank Morgan. And with your permission, Barbara, did you want me to play it now?
Please do.
So this song will be my ending, because if you don't like it, I want to get the hell out of here. Thank you, everybody. Now, this may blast you out in the front row. So we'll see what happens here. Blessing in Disguise. Now, I'll leave some copies of the lyrics, but Bob loved this song, and he'd spoken to me about it. Well, there you go.
Life's a lesson so hard to learn. You can love the fire in the sky. No one knows why or when the journey ends. You're only here if someone else along to find their way back again. You'll find your way. Look toward the sky. Oh, go on up where the eagle flies. Make love your strength and faith your friend. Oh, when you reach out, you're halfway there. Life's no burden when it's shared. All these things can be a blessing when the road is long and testing. It can make each step a blessing in disguise. It can make each step a blessing in disguise.
I said that was it.
Okay, let's see. That would be Jen.
Hello, everybody. For those of you that might be wondering, I'm not Gifford. My name is Jeff Seegers, and I come from a part of the country where you wear a hat, inside you get spanked. This is for Bob. When I got out of the service, I went to work for NCR and then got drafted to come to California to work at Pertec. And I met Bob in 1975. My first job there was, of course, to be an engineer. My second job was to help Bob set up the booth, if some of you remember, at the NCC show. My indoctrination to Bob on the very first day was, hey, you, go get a case of beer, it's hot. So we sat on the loading dock at about 110 degrees and bonded. We remained friends for 40 plus years. So that was my breaking in period. And we did many NCCs and many computer conferences, and a lot of shows and introductions after that. I guess one of the most, Bob was a hard person to surprise, because he would probably rather eat worms than let you know you got him. He always finds a way to wiggle worm out. The look on his face was a little astonishing when I told him I was taking Barbara to Singapore. He was a little bit surprised, I think. But he never said anything. And we had a good time at Singapore. Anyway, I didn't know that I was going to speak today, so all this is kind of off the cuff. Couple of things that I'd like to add is that
Bob and I played a lot of golf together. And to add to his philosophies, right, that's on the other page, was one of his greatest ones was keep your head down and your eye on the ball. If I heard that once, I probably heard that 1,000 times from him. And as a result of that, we managed to team up and really play below average golf. Right? So my respects to Barbara. It's kind of hard to stand up here and do this because all of you, when you get to be a certain age, start losing friends at an alarmingly fast rate. And so, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Laura, you can go up. Yeah, that'll be good.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Young. UV called me Lorelei. For me, my brothers Russell and Rich, and my sister Lynn, Uncle Bob was our only uncle. He married my mother's youngest sister, Elaine. Uncle Bob called her Skinny in 1963. I was 9 years old then. I, along with many in this room, was his favorite. Some of my earliest memories of UV were about how he spoiled me. He gave me my first stereo, and he bought me a pink Princess telephone when I was 13. He liked to spoil me. Back in the day, that was a big deal, having your own phone. Of course, I got in a lot of trouble with that phone, but anyway. I remember when I was planning my wedding, my husband and I were going back and forth. I wanted my name first on everything, and he wanted his name first on everything. So Uncle Bob heard about this, and lo and behold, I got a package in the mail that had toasting goblets. Mine said Laura and Ted, and it says Ted and Laura. That's how it really was, yeah. Let's see. Okay, I just remember him as being a big tease, a jokester, and he had this god-awful, annoying whistle. I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but he was married to my aunt for 8 years, and in those 8 years, they moved a lot. They lived in West LA. That's where Bobby was born. And in Canoga Park, that's where Tracy was born. Simi Valley. They moved up to Northern California, lived in Newark, and then back down south to Downey, Redondo Beach, and Woodland Hills. That's where Mandy was born. In 1971, they split up. And that was the first divorce that we ever had in our family. Nothing really changed. They showed us by their example that divorce didn't have to be ugly and nasty. No matter how they felt, neither one ever badmouthed each other. Uncle Bob still came to all the weddings, the funerals. He was always with us on Christmas Eve. He went on all our summer vacations to Tahoe, where NorCal cousins and SoCal cousins had a really good time at the cabin. It was chaotic, it was crazy. He was the only adult that would ever offered to take all his kids to the beach. I don't know if he watched us or not, but we did not lose an uncle when they divorced, not one bit. He was still in our lives just as much as ever, and eventually in 1989, Barbara, the love of his life, joined our family. The last phone conversation that we had, he said, "So, are you pregnant?" Really, Uncle Bob, I just got on Medicare. He's like, "Are you sure?" He had a sense of humor to the end. Thanks for all the great memories, and as Grandpa Wally would say, happy trails till we meet again.
My name is Joyce Bennett Hall, and I'm speaking a little bit sooner because I have to leave earlier than most of you. And I loved Bob, and I love Barbara. And you heard John Durrell speak up here, fabulous songwriter. You heard Frank Morgan sing. You're going to hear Reverend Gifford Smith later, and our friend Jeff is sitting at our same table. Back in the 90s, Reverend Gifford and I started the Spiritual Center, and John alluded to that. And Barbara and Bob joined us. And the five of them were so close. Wherever you saw Jeff, you'd see Reverend Gifford, or you'd see Bob, you saw John, you'd see Frank. They were like the five musketeers all through that time. It was such a strong male bond. They went to meetings together, and they joked together, and they acted like fools together. So it was great during that time. And then Barbara and Bob moved to Sedona. And during that time, I was an advocate for a Navajo girl. And one day I got a phone call from Barb and Bob saying that they had visited her at the school that she was in, and she was being abused. And so I asked them if they would take her out for dinner, and they did until I could get there. When I got there, the school kept her from me. They didn't want me to see her. So they allowed me, Barbara and Bob invited me with their cat, Normal, was the name Normal? That was
Stolen when we moved to Sedona.
Oh, did? Oh, okay. And so I never heard of a cat named Normal. I had such a hard time with that. I wanted to call him Normal. But he wasn't normal. I never saw a cat. And Bob and Barb helped me in that situation, which was a very heartfelt situation, actually. It was very hard to hear some of the stories. And Bob was very gracious during that time and offered to help in any way, to visit, to accompany me, to be my protector, although I'm not so sure that would have worked out because sometimes when Bob was a protector, it didn't work out that way. You ended up protecting Bob, you know. So a little while later, you know, his heart was giving him trouble when they came back. And I had the honor and this is a memory that I've held ever since this day. It was the night before his surgery. And I believe Jeff, John, Giff, and I were there. And there were several others I can't remember. And we made a circle around his bed. And of course you were there. And we prayed. We prayed. We brought in angels, we brought in anything and everyone and every deity, and because we wanted this so much for him. So to this day, I feel so honored to have been part of that. And I think there was another story that wasn't mentioned by you, that I think you said that Bob was starting to have a taste for Coke or Pepsi or something.
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper. And he found out that Brody drank Dr. Pepper. So all of a sudden, Bob wanted all this Dr. Pepper. And he was funny, and the last last thing I'll say is, his name was Legs. He always called himself Legs because he's always challenged me to whoever who had the best legs. So on Sunday morning, when Governor Smith was speaking, or I was speaking, before we could go up to the pulpit, he'd say, "Show me your legs." So I'd have to show him my legs, and then he'd roll up his pants in the spiritual center and stick out his leg and say, "No, my legs are way better." So we just nicknamed him Legs. What an amazing human being, a fun man. I know that he's helped so many people in the program that you could just go on and on. But thanks so much. I just wanted to share the part that, well, besides being called Legs, I just felt so honored to be part of that transplant, and thank you for sharing. Thank you so much.
Good. So, my name is Gary Del Vecchio. I'm Adam Del Vecchio's father. My wife Cindy is here. And so, as most of you know, Adam and Jody have been married for 14 years? Almost, right? So we have known Bob and Barb for that many years, a little bit more. And you know, when you join two families together, they're not really sure what you're going to get, right? And Mona would say, you get what you get, you don't have to pay, right? However, in our case, we hit the lottery, right? So from the beginning, it was a great relationship all of us had together, right? So some notes that Cindy and I just jotted down over these years, right? You know, we've been on vacation with Bob. We've had, they've attended weddings of our children. I remember Bob and Barb coming to our daughter's wedding, and you know, there wasn't enough room in our house for everybody, so they had to get a hotel room. And we have my wife's sister, Joanne. She's a little high maintenance. She's high maintenance, right? And so Bob and Barb would have to take her back to the hotel room every night, and Bob would come back the next day and said, "You owe me big time." So I always remember that, right? I remember playing golf on this golf course, and we played with a gentleman, I think he's passed away, right? But when we played with him, and Adam was there too, Bob goes, "Watch how he marks his ball." Right? And so all golfers know you got your ball and you put your mark behind it. Well, he would always put his mark in front of the ball. No, but that was, it was used, right? And it's, "Bob, whatever you call him on it." He goes, "I can still beat him." So, I mean, those are things that you just remember about him. You know, him in the straw hat, it's just amazing. I think when we had, when Jody had a shower, I think it was Mike and Lucy's house, I can't remember, right? And we played golf here with Adam that day, and we go back to Mike and Lucy's house, and there's Bob sitting with a straw hat and with dark sunglasses on. And, you know, I'm looking at him, and I'm taking some shots, and I'm saying, "This guy looks like the mafia." Right? Either that, or he's like an undercover guy. Right? So it was pretty cool knowing him. I have a big smile on my face all the time thinking about him. He'd come to our house. My wife likes to decorate, so over a portion of the wall we have like a 6-foot ladder. It's sort of antique, whatever it is, right? And he sits down next to me and he goes, "How often are you going to use that ladder?" So and it had that really dry sense of humor, right? It was really cool, you know. Christmas mornings, getting together with Bob and Barb, right, and with the grandkids, you know, enjoying them all together. 4th of July, remembering the outstanding balloon fights we had at Adam and Jody's old house. Hundreds of people in the street, Bob hysterical there. So yeah, I mean, all good times. Went out Halloween with Mona and Nick, and Jack and Adam and Josh and Zachary and Jody, and we're all dressed up, right? And just taking part in a lot of fun. So, you know, it's sad, but you think all the good times, right? And like you said, Barb, I know he's there, right? For sure, right? He's there. And Bob, just so you know, right? All right. Well, this will make you happy. Dodgers have the best record in baseball. But Detroit's not going to win at all, right? So, as we say in Italian, a salute, right? Thank you.
Michelle? Before I start, I think I need to take care of some business. Yes? Uncle Bob would come to our Super Bowl party each year, and this year he wasn't able to make it. He wasn't up to it. But of course, he and Barb sent their money for the pool, and he won. As usual. And if he didn't win, it was definitely fixed. So I was going to send him his money, but my son got diabetes and we were in the hospital. And then life happened, and then I heard he wasn't doing so well, and I was really mad because I was going to send him $1 every day. Just to really, get to him. But I was waiting, hoping that I'd have a chance to go see him. Lots of hats, presents. One year at Christmas, I have to bring it up, he brought t-shirts with his likeness, and they read, "Gee, Uncle Bob, Uncle Bob's a great guy." And we'd often say, "What a great guy," after that. Another year was the trophies. We've heard about those already, so I won't go into that. But he always found a way to outdo himself. He was larger than life and full of fun, and laughter followed him everywhere. When he married A.B., it was like he was duplicated. I can't imagine you shy. He definitely complimented you beautifully. He had a partner for all his pranks, and their relationship has been a beautiful example to me. I tried my best to duplicate the magic of Tweedy Lane. I have 5 children, not quite 8, but still a solid B+. Each of my children is blessed to know and love Uncle Bob. He came not only to our Super Bowl parties, but also to the kids' football games, birthdays, and graduations. He was so present in my life, in our lives. And to me, he represented the magic of Tweedy Lane during my childhood. He was the best example to my children of the fun that it meant to be a Richard. One year he was at the house, and he said to Robert, the second son, who was I guess, probably 13 or something now. And so he looked at him and he said, "So, you old enough now, you watch the teams or you watch the cheerleaders?" And my son's eyes, and he said, "I watch the football." And he said, "Bullshit." Another time when the kids were playing football, the eldest, you get the letters and you have to send out to your family and ask for money. So we send out the letter because we're forced to. And then the second son got the same thing from his school, a letter, and we had to send it out. And as I'm filling out the address, I'm thinking, people are going to think I just want money. So I turned to Joseph and I said, "Joseph, get your pencil." So he wrote this ransom letter and followed it up. So the second letter went out, and then Joseph, my third son, his letter arrived and it said, "Uncle Bob, don't tell Mom, but send money." And then Graceling's letter arrived the next day saying, "Uncle Bob, don't tell Mom, but send candy." So he responded with his glossies to his favorites, and there was some remark to Joseph about rubbing 2 dimes together. And Graceland got some toothpaste with some candy and said, "Make sure you brush," on the glossy. Lots of stories. When I think of Uncle Bob, I think of F words: family, friends, fun, football, favorite. When you leave here today, I hope you will take with you the UB spirit, and that is to make every person you love feel like you are their favorite.
I'm a supporting actor here.
Do you have beer? Do you have airplane watch?
I have one thing to say after.
Hi. We are the famous Leroy and Rita. I met Barbara and Bob when I started working with Barbara in 1999. And I'd like to share a bit of a story about aging by George Carlin.
Anybody remember George Carlin?
And which talks about milestones in our lives. So it starts out, do you realize that the only time in our lives when we like to get old is when we're kids? If you're less than 10 years old, you're so excited about aging that you think in fractions. How old are you? I'm 4.5. You're never 36.5. Or 55.5. You're 4.5, and you're going on 5. Barbara's son, well, there's only one Kevin. Thank God. Kevin and his wife Clarissa have been celebrating, along with pictures, milestones of their twins, Athena and Atlas, in days and weeks and months. And since they were born in February of this year, just like Barbara's daughter Jody and her husband Adam celebrated Zach and Josh's milestones, as most parents do. New parents They want to send out the pictures, and they want to let you know when they're 2 weeks and 4 weeks, and then they're a month and 3 months and 4 months, and we've been able to celebrate all those milestones. Now, when you get into your teens, you jump to the next number, or even a few ahead. How old are you? I'm going to be 16.
Gotta be 16.
You could be only 13. But hey, you're going to be 16. And then the greatest day of your life, you become 21. Even the words sound like a ceremony. So you become 21, you turn 30, you push 40, you reach 50, and you make it to 60. I missed a lot of those milestones of Bob's because I didn't meet Bob and Barbara until he made it into the 60s. And Bob's greatest milestone, which I was able to experience, was Barbara's receipt of a new heart. After Barbara's call to me over Memorial Day weekend in 2002, I drove to UCLA to be with Barbara and Jody during the surgery. After what seemed like an eternity, there was a phone call for Barbara that the surgery was completed successfully, and she was told the doctor would come and talk to her. I remember the doctor coming down to the waiting room and telling us to come up and see Bob, just come. And I said, but I'm not family. And he said, come up to the room, come with us. I'll never forget the sight of Bob and the miracle that had occurred. Prayers were answered that night. An often heard phrase that probably best described that moment for me. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. I always tried to remember to send him a birthday card for his heart birthday, and this year's card actually had a heart on it. Barbara always took very good care of Bob over the years, always very strong, calm, and cheerful, and always the most loving partner. Becoming partners and part doctor, always knowing better than the doctors and the nurses what was best for Bob. My husband and Leroy and I, we will remember the times that we spent together with Bob and Barbara, like hanging out at our house when Camarillo Springs would have to evacuate due to fires and mudslides and rock slides and heavy rains. They even had their own house key for our house. And I remember calling home when I was in Minnesota one December to find out that they were there. And I wasn't. This last November was a rather last-minute evacuation, and I remember ending up having to serve scrambled eggs and bacon burritos for dinner. But they laughed, and everything was good. We had a good time. There were early bird dinners at Yolanda's, and we always sat in the same booth. We had birthday celebrations and Oktoberfest celebrations, and I think they came to every one of them. I don't think they ever missed one. We've been doing it for about 14 years, 15 this year. We will miss Bob and his humor, and we are thankful and blessed that we were able to visit with him these last few weeks, if only to bring Blue Bunny vanilla bean ice cream and strawberries. And let him tell stories before he drifted off to sleep holding our hand. Love you, Bob.
How can I add any more to that? I'm very good. Bob has always been a great friend. And she was talking about early bird dinners, Oktoberfest. We have Oktoberfest every year at our house because we have a wedding anniversary every year. It's great fun everyone, somebody, Barbara, the other day, I had to tell her, from the deepest part of my heart, a wonderful wife.
This is why I Good job, Mandy. Oh, yeah, Mandy.
At every dip and turn, she's always been there, totally complete. There's no man that could ever. Yeah, that's why I'm not on the schedule. Every man out there, you can have a wife like Barbara. You'll be blessed by God in the deepest and most infinite sense. Now, about a week before Bob passed, I think you were in the room. I was in the room, and Bob asked, am I going, or am I going? I want everybody here tonight, to this afternoon, to give Bob a big thumbs up. He's gone to the promised land. He's a wonderful man. I so much, my life has been enriched by his being a part of my life. And he's not gone. Bob is not gone. He's physically he may not be here, but he all lives in each of our hearts in ways that we remember. And he'll never die as long as we keep him in our hearts. And that's my message to all of you. Is anybody that you know that is amongst you here that are even the slightest friends, or introduce yourself and tell somebody that you love them, because that's all that's important. There's nothing else. Thank you.
All right. Bob was my dad, and it took me a long time to figure out how I was going to speak. One of my friends at work had told me, just write him a letter. So I wrote him a letter. It says, "Hey, Dad, well, you finally made it. Make sure to tell Tracy I said hi. I was thinking about 2.5 months ago when you were laying in that hospital bed, bitching about how much it sucked being there and how bad it was that you were losing your memory. And I said, what a lucky guy you were." And he looked at me and he said, "Huh?" I asked you if you remember the first time you met Barb, and you told me you did, and you described it to a T. I said, what a lucky guy. I asked you about your parents, you told me about your mom and what an angel she was. And I said, you were a very lucky guy. We also talked about your brother Ted, Uncle Ted, and how after all those years of not talking, you guys were getting close again. What a lucky guy. We also talked about those summers with Aunt Ricky and Uncle John and the boys, and how great they were. We had so much fun. Make sure to tell Aunt Ricky and Uncle John I said hi. I asked you if you remembered those summers, and you said yes. What a lucky guy. I asked you if you remember me, Mandy, and Tracy, and you told me of course you did, and that he was a lucky guy. And then he said, stop beating that dead horse. And I said, okay. I sure hope you're hitting them straight and far up there. I would like to thank you for all the times we went golfing. And let's not forget introducing me to the game. You taught me that life is like a round of golf. You got some tough holes and some easier holes. You sure had a long round. Definitely had some impossible holes that you made it through. Some easy holes that you enjoyed thoroughly. The heart transplant was definitely a sand trap that you and Barb turned into a birdie. She has worked tirelessly as your golf partner to keep your car on the right path, and did so till the 18th hole and beyond. She's an amazing partner. Next, it's hard to say how many lives you affected and changed with a joke or some of that Bob Zell wisdom you dispatched. I know you helped me become the man I am today, so thanks. You affected everyone in this room in one way or another. I'm sure they thank you too. I hope that you know how much I love you and everyone else loved you. I will miss you very much, Dad. Man, you're up.
Brought my own tissue.
Okay, I'm Mandy, I'm Bob's daughter. I'm also 6'4". And eternally 29. But I have tried to keep this lighthearted as he would like that. So, have you guys ever had to buy Christmas gifts for people who have everything? Super hard, right? I've done that, okay? So in the name of safety and fun, I sent Dad and Barb hip waders and headlamps when the mudslides came. I sent them reflective vests and paper masks when they were evacuated for the fire. And thanks to Facebook and my wonderful Barb, it was all documented for you guys to see. So it's probably a safe bet to say that I got some of my dad's sense of humor. Comes in very handy. His life comes at you pretty hard sometimes, so. Okay. When Barb first asked me to speak, I immediately said no. How could I capture the essence that is my dad? Okay, and I thought about what to say, and she encouraged me to, say something. So I'm not really sure that my dad lit up a room in the traditional sense, so to speak. But I can tell you for sure that your gathering wasn't the same without him. You were waiting to hear a funny one-liner or a story, and of course the pearls of wisdom. He always made a memorable impression. My dad was all about family and friendships through marriages and even divorce. My mom and dad have always been friends. And her family continued to be his family. And when he married Barb, his family, her family became his family, and everybody just became family in his eyes. Everybody was just family, keeping the family together in his heart. And how awesome that was for me, okay? When Dad and Barb would come to a town, they would expect to go to Mom and Auntie's to play cards and have dinner, and vice versa. Mom and Auntie would say, "Oh, Dad and Barb are coming. They're coming over, right?" So, how odd would that be for a man to say, "My wife and my ex-wife, we're all friends. We sit around and play 31," and that's a pretty great experience. So, needless to say, family was not relative, so to speak. And that's what got me thinking about what to say today. Sometimes being born into a family is kind of iffy, You got show-offs and overachievers and high maintenance, black sheep. It goes on and on. Other than myself and these four gentlemen, we are his blood family. And the rest of you are his chosen family, if I can say that. Handpicked, which I think is amazing. I want you guys to know that he kept all of you close to his heart, and I think that makes the relationships more meaningful and the people more special, because you can honestly say, I'm not here because I was born into this family. I was chosen to be part of this family. Sometimes when we would talk about on the phone, and I'd tell him some stupid story, and he'd say, "You guys are just having way too much fun." And I can tell you by looking at this room, I was not the one who was having way too much fun, okay? He was having way too much fun. So during the last year or so, when Dad's health started to decline, I tried to visit as much as I could.
And I could see how frustrating this was for him because he knew his health was declining and that it was affecting his quality of life. So while our hearts are heavy now, we all need to be comforted knowing that someone we loved and admired is no longer struggling with that. And in time, we'll be able to think of Dad and laugh at some silly story or funny phrase. But for right now, our hearts just kind of hurt. And this will probably be the hardest part for me, but I have to say it. I need to tell Barbara, thank you. You completed my dad. You cared for him in all ways. And from this daughter's heart, you have my eternal gratitude and respect. I know that these last months were so hard for you. You were the complete example of compassion and patience and love. And we all need more people like Barb in our life. So in closing and in kind of fun, Dad loved music. So we put some kazoos on the table for you guys because he would have loved the kazoos. Kazoos are not easy. By the way, you don't blow into a kazoo, you hum into a kazoo. So I just thought it would be a fun gesture and maybe a keepsake for people if, you know, he would like that. Well, I kind of thought for He's a Jolly Good Fellow is a great song.
I think that's great.
But in closing, I really would just like to thank you guys all for coming because it's a great example of an amazing life. Okay. And then, before we get crazy with the kazoos, we have a grandson that would like to say a few words. So, Rob. Oh, was it Ryan? One of them? Oh, Ryan?
Mine's a little more on the serious end. So.
Yeah, not for you.
You can do it. You can do it.
Thought we were going to do a kazoo song there for a second, so I was hoping to get skipped over for this right here. But so I kind of have a tradition when it comes to family members and any really big events. I have a talent that I don't really like to use a whole lot because it doesn't really mean a whole lot until it's the right times, and I write poetry for really big events. And when Aunt Tracy passed away, I wrote one for her. I don't know how many folks might have remembered that. I honestly don't remember what I wrote at all. I didn't save it, and I kind of wish I did. I actually intend to keep this one. So I'm sorry if anyone cries after I read this, by the way, because I got the memo about the happy story concepts, but you know, we dump our feelings into what we write, and that's kind of where I went. So here we go. Starting simple always seems best. Grandpa wore his sarcasm like a bulletproof vest. Attempt to outwit, outmatch, or outthink. He'd put you in your place and end with the slightest wink. And it was never in bad taste. He used every word without waste. Intelligence that inspired, no caffeine needed to keep his brain wired. These are surface observations of someone I love. But there's a reason that I put him one step above. His care expanded beyond saying what we wanted to hear. His life was about his most definite fears. And I'm not talking about his fears for himself. His desire to hope the best for us all drove him to put some of our backs against the wall. He wasn't afraid to cover all the bases, and he didn't fear treading in the uncomfortable places. His fear was that we would not hear and listen, lessons from a man who's fallen and risen. His dedication to his family was not for his own gain, unless his gain was the satisfaction of clearing our own pain. Just know, Grandpa Zell, with you gone, things won't be the same, but I will proudly carry on our family names to the rest of us. And choose to live a life I know you'd be proud I chose. Rest easy, Grandpa, and be free of your woes. I understand what I'm stepping into here. So I don't have any poem. I don't got anything like that. Again, I'm a little more serious on it. He's been a lot of things to a lot of people over the years. To me, though, he's always been Gramps. One of the things that, I don't know if you ever did it with any of you guys can see there's tons of pictures of him up on the wall over there. Something that I don't know if you ever did it with you guys. You know, Grandma's taking the picture over there. Everyone say cheese. He never said cheese. Never said cheese. He would always say something silly to get you to laugh unexpected. Something you're not going to expect, for me, young teenager at the time, something you're not going to expect an old man to say. And it's like, what was that? And you're immediate. Yeah, that's what most of those smiles are up on there. If you're seeing me, myself, or me, my brother. That's something that that's Grandpa. That's Gramps. Right after I graduated high school, he pushed me to go to college. He put money forth some for me to go to college. I dropped out. I went to college again. I dropped out. About 2 years after high school, I decided to enlist in the Navy. He supported me through that, regardless of attempting something and failing. He was proud of my choice. Something else that he did during my high school years, right? As all of you have talked about, he cared about people. He cared about my self-development. I was a senior in high school. It was the January year of my senior year of high school. He got me a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, right? I'm sitting here going, what is this, Gramps? I'm 17, about to be 18 years old. What is this? My dad played tennis. What are you trying to suggest? For me to play tennis? I actually read the book and went through it, and I'm reading through this book, and it wasn't about tennis. It was about making yourself better. The author used tennis as a metaphor to improve self. Fast forwarding a few years, I was on deployment on the USS Lincoln in 2012. 6 months into my deployment, I get a book called Body Language for Dummies. And here I am up here, still trying to practice. I'm not quite there yet, but the effort was there, He cared about my self-development. He was always asking, always trying to do what was best for his, grandsons and then for everybody else in here, obviously. As most of you know, and it's been mentioned multiple times in here, Gramps was the recipient of a heart transplant. I always like to think of it like, here's a fancy muscle car, and it's just got a brand new engine in it. And it just gave this muscle car so much more get up and go. It gave him the extra juice to keep going, because the other stuff I'm going to talk about, it wouldn't have been possible without him receiving that heart, because I was 12 or 13 when that happened. So those extra years in particular, I was grateful for. Fast forwarding a few years, right? 2015, I was stationed in Port Hueneme. Port Hueneme, for those of you, it's just down the road, right? Because of that, I lived a lot closer. And I had never lived close to my grandfather. It was amazing to have that time with him. All the way up until 2018, I was
still here in California, still stationed here in California. And I was able to spend a lot more time with him than I would have never been able to spend with him, you know. Even again, in those later years, he was always asked, and even in his declining state, even, as things were getting worse, he was always asking me about how I was doing. Asking what I was up to, how was the military treating me? You gonna get another school from them? You gonna get them to pay for something else for you? You gonna get something else taken care of? How was your love life doing? Right? So on and so forth, right? While I lived in Port Hueneme, I started dating, and then I got engaged, and then I got married to Janae over here. Yeah.
You'll learn, sir.
Gramps and Grandma were the first family members to meet Janae. They were the first people. Not only because they were close, everybody else lives, a distance away, but Gramps was one of the best people at being able to judge others, in my mind. And we met over lunch. I had her, and Janae, me, Gramps and Grandma over lunch. And the two of them disappeared at some point during the lunch, and he took me aside, or rather, spoke to me a little bit, just one-on-one. And I asked him, I was like, so what do you think? And he's like, I'm glad that you finally found a partner who was smarter than you. Almost as smart as him. Almost. Tough to beat. But I was glad to have his approval. Our final conversation was tough on him. He was, as he always did, even laying on that bed, he wanted to know how Jay was doing. You want to know how I was doing. You want to know how we were doing. I told him that Janae was doing better. I told him that after about 10 years being in the military, and after having dropped out of college, I was restarting my pursuit of a degree, a bachelor's degree. And I didn't actually get to tell him at the time. I'm actually furthering that, and it's going to be a master's. I'm going to go for a master's. And additionally to that, I told him, hey, I've been enlisted for 10 years. I'm going to go through a commissioning program. And it was, in that moment, it was to me a superficial thing. With what he had going on, this meant, in the grand scheme, it meant nothing to me. But I could tell that it meant a lot to him. The final word that he said to me was, thanks. The last word. And it was difficult at the time to really accept that, right? But I look back on it, and that one word said a lot. For years, he had been encouraging me, supporting me, doing everything that I could see, at least, to push me forward, push me towards success. And in those final moments, I was able to give him, a sense of a job well done. You did good, correct? Almost done. Almost. I'm always gonna remember you, Gramps, when I'm getting my picture taken. I'm gonna think of you saying something off kilter, something to make me laugh. I'm always gonna remember you, Gramps.
Hold on. Costume change. Not a potty break, but there's a whole thing. The twin thing. Not a Zill thing. No. It's a twin thing. An entourage. Phil, no way back. You talked to him already? I did. We had a conversation. Watch the cord.
Watch the cord.
Watch the cord, Kevin. I really am 6'4", so wait, can you like flare this? No. No. Just pick it up and hold it. That works too. Okay. That's too light. In case any of you didn't see us. I'm going to jump around on my speech a little bit, but my husband, Kevin, has said to me for years, it takes us a long time to get these little bundles of joy. And he said, I want some monkeys. So there was always these conversations about how he wanted monkeys. So I happened to find these shirts with these bananas, and like the whole family could wear them. So, his whole family of monkeys is wearing bananas. And Kevin's like, yeah, I don't think I can wear that. And oh, that's straight. No, straight. No. Here, actually, he's part of it. They have, yes, okay, that's not true. They have their grandpa, grandpa, sorry. They have their grandpa hats on. And we waited a long time for these little monkeys. All right, you don't want to wear the hat. I'll say a couple things. In the meantime, that just recently happened. So, Mandy, when you came and you said, I have these balloons, and I don't know why, but I need to bring these balloons. I don't want it to be a kid's birthday party, but I have to bring these balloons. Do you know why you had to bring those balloons? Yeah, because your dad wanted to make sure that we knew he was here. So any color, because that kit came with many colors, right? Any color could have been released. And what was Barbara's fear? Don't release a balloon. Well, we could just secretly let the babies release the balloons. If you could have thought, that would be news.
No.
We frown upon that here. Don't release any balloons. And then Barbara says, a balloon got released. And I said, oh no. She said, Brazilian's life. And it's yellow. Now that yellow balloon could have ended up over there, and there. Where is it? Right where everybody's talking. He is hearing every single word. And I want you to know that you were told to bring balloons for that reason. And you were told to bring kazoos. Just hasn't worked its way in, but anyway, okay. Oh wow. So we had been working on these little guys for many years, and in November, knowing that we were gonna have, after several losses, we were gonna have boy-girl twins, and Bob was actually feeling pretty good in November. He'd gone up, Bryce. He went shopping with you, right? I think it was the only time we got to go before Christmas. And Barbara sent me a shirt. And if you notice, it says the family favorite. And it's in yellow with little happy faces on it. So we had to make sure that he wore it. And when he outgrows it, he'll go to his sister, because honestly, we all know how much Barbara needed a little grand girl. No offense, Zach and Josh, but there needed to be a little girl to take over the queendom, right? For those of you who don't know too much about me, and most of you are friends with Bob, so you don't know me. I entered this family late. Maybe some of the wives will understand where I'm coming from. I gotta go. I wrote notes while this was all happening. Had to acknowledge the yellow balloon right above me. Had to acknowledge that. The tons of pictures that Barbara had time to put together. One of the things that she said, and it was also remarked in Pete's first opening comments of the glasses and the hat. She said, you know how many pictures I went through where I had to find pictures of him without a hat and glasses on? So she went through thousands of pictures to be able to come up with those pictures with his face. The age difference that you were lied about to make him, more appealing. I don't want to do the math, because this actually I just thought about this when I was listening to Rebecca. I don't want to ask. Okay, I'm going to just ask, because that's me. Okay. How old was Brody?
He was about to turn 21.
So 21 minus 66.
Well, he was 66 when he died.
Which is, anybody?
66 minus 21 is
45. And you were at what time? How old were you when you guys got married? Well, no, you don't.
I was 39.
39 and 45. We're closer. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying here? So you married the heart that came, that was young. That was part of that whole relationship. Is you got that young, amazing heart. Barbara has always sent us lottery tickets, little scratchers, and sometimes we'd scratch them. Too much beer. We'd scratch them over the phone, or wait till they came for Thanksgiving, or in June when it's warmer in Nevada. And she said, "Oh yeah, we're going to win the lottery." And listening to her whole story, and knowing over the last several months how she said, "Well, Bob and I have discussed this. We've been discussing this for months. There's a cue he's going to tell me, and he's got an in up there. He's going to tell me when I win the lottery." Well, let me tell you guys, if she actually wins the lottery,
Bob.
That was heaven. Yeah. Do you want to send us all to Hawaii? I mean, if you win the lottery, we can all go and all celebrate again, right? That's what we wanted, is to get, your guys' house is Hawaii.
It could have honestly been one of them. I wanted to add that with that heart, as some of you may or may not know, that Bob became an artist. And there's so many paintings throughout their house of.
Does everyone know that?
Bob wasn't an artist
Never
beforehand,
painted
never
once,
painted once.
beforehand, and all of a sudden started doing.
And in your conversation or in your story when you said that he said something, I thought he was going to ask, was he a painter? And instead it came out Oklahoma and Indian, but there's all these pictures. Well, as Barbara was going through things, she found some pictures that Bob didn't like that were meant for us. And she switched them on the wall just to see if we'd notice. Kevin noticed, didn't say anything. And I said, those 3 pictures are different. And she said, yeah, I hung up out there. He made them for you, but he didn't like them. And they were meant for us to see. So thank you for that. I don't want to do the math again, but I came into this family a little bit on the late side. I missed some of the stuff. When I came in, I feel like I need this to be taller, I really do. I don't want to hold it either. And you were a great microphone person. One of the first things we did is have a big reunion in, yeah, you're nodding, yes, the brown shirts, the cowboy boots, like that's, okay, I remember Marshall, the pink and purple hair, you know, I'm like, oh, who was the girl with the pink and purple hair? And who's the kid with the green hair? Is he here? Are you really? Okay, so I remember you. There's, you know, we were catering the family reunion, and the catering of the family reunion included a beer trailer from my husband, who then didn't make it through past 6 o'clock. And I know Sam, who's not here, helped put Kevin in my car and record it for later use. But you know, I was included and I was confused on who was who and how Bob knew all these Richards. There were so many Richards. And I'd met Richards before because when we opened the deli, and there's 3 pictures up there, pictures of construction, that Pete and across Matt lived not too far from us, so I was able to meet some of the Richards. My understanding in my head was that the Richards were kind of all of his kids, but I knew about Mandy, I knew about Bobby, but I knew about Tracy, but there was all these Richards kids too. So I was kind of confused, and I remember playing cards with you. Okay? So I thought Bob's ex-wife was Dorothy. Because it kind of made sense that, you know, he remained really close with all these Richard kids, right? And you were just part of the family. And, you know, I've had my share of marriages, and you've had your share of marriages. And not to talk about myself, but, you know, when we met, I said, oh gosh, if we get married, you know, it'll be our 3rd. What would your mother think? And she said, she'll be happy because Bob was her 3rd. And 3rd time's a charm, and they're working on 25 years. And this was, you know, years ago. They're working on 25 years and they've been happy. And I have no problem with that. 3rd time's a charm. I didn't know Bob hung out in Tahoe in the 70s. That's where I'm from. I guess I could have met him earlier. Someone at that reunion had told me, and it may have been Sam or somebody of the kids, because there were some other people who weren't family that were there, and said, you become family if you've ever changed a diaper or ever been with anybody over 10 years. So if anybody wants to become a little closer to family, we've got 2 here that you were already family, but that are available if you want to come closer. What you may not know is that, unfortunately, within the last 45 days, Kevin Kevin and Jody not only lost their stepdad, but also dad Bob of 35 plus years, but they lost their biological father Mike 20 something days prior. And so it's been a really, really tough time for them, and neither of them really wanted to speak because it's just not, it's hard. I tried to ask Kevin a couple things about what he would have wanted to say, and he couldn't even answer me. So I went back in my own memories of how am I going to tell your mom, that we're interested in each other when I've already been married twice, and he said, mom's on her third, and it's worked, and so she'll be totally okay with it. So I have a son. I look really good, by the way. My son's 25, and I have twins who are 4 months old. Maybe I was like 8 when I had her. As my son was meeting Kevin, he was 16-ish, and he's still 8. And Kevin said, it was really hard. I was around 16 when my mom and Bob got together, and I know that Bob made my mom happy. And that was number one, is how much happiness it brought to my mom. It was hard because Bob made him follow some rules. And we know that Hanger had actually thought of Bob as kind of a second dad, and you mentioned in Mike's memorial, or the after, of how much Bob kind of scared you because he said, what you been doing? Follow the rules, yeah. Anyway, so Kevin looked at me and he said, if all I ever am to Tyler is a Bob, I'm okay with that. And that has did you ever call Bob Dad? You never called Bob Dad because you had your dad. But Bob was Bob. Bob's a parallelogram. And if you don't know what a parallelogram is, which is my one word for that note, by the way, how to describe him, he's a parallelogram. Same fours as it is backwards, just like mom. B-O-B, turn it around, it's still B-O-B. Upside down, still kind of B-O-B. When I first met Bob, when I first met Bob, it was approximately a month after we had started the deli. It says on your menu that it's been catered by Minden Meat Deli. We're in Minden, Nevada, and yes, we are catering a celebration of life in California, and we had to bring everything with us. Bob and Barbara came for Thanksgiving. Kevin and I started dating middle of October. Bob sits down and he says, we're doing construction in this restaurant. It's just all to pieces. I think there's a couple pictures at the first or second floor. And Bob sits down and he looks at me and goes, what are your intentions? And I look at him and I said, well, first I'm gonna kick down this wall. And if I can't kick it down, I'll use the sledgehammer. However, it's much more satisfying if I kick it down and it gets out my personal aggressions than using the sledgehammer. But I don't know where the plywood is that's supporting the wall, and I don't want to hurt myself. And he looks at me again, he goes, I meant, what are your intentions with Kevin? I said, I don't know. We're just kind of dating. He said, no, you're not. He says, you've known each other for about a month. And he said, no, And I want you to know that he's been working on this place and he has a plan, and I need to know that you know what he's been doing and how much thought and how much time has been put into it. And I was like, I'm dating this guy and I'm planning on kicking down this wall. And I said, do you want a drink? I think I need a drink. And he said, no. I had a really good relationship with Jack. I had no clue what that meant. Now I do. He didn't go into the details. I didn't have a relationship that you guys had with him of funniness, of jokiness. It was much more serious. One of the last times that he got to see the twins, I told you a couple people today that Athena was wearing a shirt that said, Grandma has a pizza, my heart, little shirt, pepperoni pizza. And he said, I want pizza. Like he knew everything that was going on. I want pizza. Well, we had already ordered Chinese because Rita and Leroy were coming over. Leroy. We're coming over. But he wanted pizza. The next day we got pizza. He knew all of that. His heart kept him going. His heart kept all of you guys in it. I'm going to read a poem that Barbara asked me to read that I read for Mike, but it's very, very fitting, and maybe even more fitting for Bob. I got to get out my phone that I left over there. While Kevin's getting my phone, my last little thing says, in my next life, I want to be married to Barbara. She is such an amazing kid. Okay, all right, amazing caregiver. And Mandy, one of the other things that you didn't mention that you sent her with that nurse's hat. Yeah.
Oh, the tiara? Oh, she sent me the tiara.
Yeah, the tiara. Somebody sent a nurse's hat. We would exchange kind of towards the end stories of, well, Atlas slept 2 hours last night. She said, Bob slept 2 hours last night. Atlas ate dinner at 10. Bob ate dinner at 10. Atlas woke up without pants. Bob took his pants off last night because he thought he had gone to the other side, and he told her, I don't need them. She said, why aren't you wearing off your pants? I don't need them here. You're still here. No, I'm not. Yes, you are.
Need somebody to take a child?
Yeah, here, one. My kid.
Anybody want a kid? They're very fun.
After I continue, we're going to go to John Richard's video presentation into the Vietnam veterans presentation, and then we'll have lunch or dinner. This poem's called The Dash. It's by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. And please take this to heart. You guys will all accept this differently. Just listen to it. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noticed that first came the date of his birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he had said what mattered, what most of all, was the dash in between all of those years. For the dash represents all of the time that he had spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved him know what that dash was really worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the cash, the house. What matters most is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. To think this long and hard, are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that still can be rearranged. Has Bob got that second chance? to be less quick to anger, and to show appreciation more, to love the people in our lives like we have never loved them before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last for a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's action to rehash, would you be proud of the things that they say about how you lived in your dash? And even though Barbara had thousands and thousands of pictures to choose from, this is what she came up with. And from the beginning to the end, this is just part of Bob's dash. All of you are part of Bob's dash. All of the people that sent hundreds of cards to Barbara who could not be here are part of Bob's dash. Thank you.
Oh, that's right. Gonna walk away without it.
If there are any veterans here, you would render the proper salute. Otherwise, please place your right hand over your heart.
Oh.